Yandra and good morning, Fiji, and welcome to another episode of the Brunch on MaiTV. I'm Jacquee Speight, and this morning, as you can see, I'm in studio by myself. You might be wondering where my wonderful co-host is. Stanley has decided he will join us remotely, so we're going to cross now to him live at the Pearl Resort in Pacific Harbour. We're not sure if he's really there for work or he's on a holiday, but let's see what he has to say. Good morning, Stanley.
Good morning, Jacquee. Bulavinaka from the Uprising Resort in Pacific Harbour. It's, you asked if I was really working. I've been doing some really deep thinking this last 2 days. We've been talking about Fiji's defense priorities and what needs to be done for Fiji to become a more secure, resilient and prosperous country. And I've been joined today by the Akuila Savu, the Director of Defense Coordination for the Ministry for Defense and Veteran Affairs, and the Republic of Fiji, and the Republic of Fiji Military Forces Director of Force Development and Strategic Commitments, Colonel Aseri Rokoura.
Understand.
Right. So over the last 3 days, we've been the defense officials, government stakeholders, we've been holding a defense strategic guidance consultation workshop. Now last year, Jacquee, and if people may not be aware, the Prime Minister launched Fiji's national security strategy. So the strategy identified 8 challenges, which was trust deficit in government institutions, drug trade, because there's lack of faith in government's response and in the institutions involved, geopolitics, transnational crime, cybersecurity, environment and climate change, and social fracturing and economic security. So these are some of the big challenges that were issued. The meeting this week, where Colonel Rokoura and Mr. Savu has been one of the leaders of the discussions, has been to explore and determine how the Ministry of Defense and the RFMF effectively address these challenges. What is their role and what needs to be done or changed for them to have the capability to secure and protect and defend Fiji. So I'll come first to you, Mr. Savu. At the moment, there's a lot of insecurity, one would say, in Fiji, and lack of trust in defense institutions and Fiji's capabilities. So what is being done and how are you looking, building on from this national security strategy that was launched last year, to secure Fiji and rebuild that trust?
Thank you for the question, Stan, and good morning, viewers. With regards to the rebuilding of trust, there's a few things that are being done or are planned to be done so that trust can be rebuilt within Fiji's defense sector, especially from our general public. One of the first things that's being looked at is the reforming of the defense legislations, whether it be an RFMF Act or an overall defense act. One of the main ideas behind that is to inbuild the civilian oversight function over the defense sector, so that the defense sector is accountable to the people of Fiji in terms of their actions. Another thing that we are doing, especially from the Ministry of Defense side, is becoming involved in whole of government initiatives or whole of nation initiatives. Things like the Convention of the Elimination of Discrimination against Women and Girls, and we provide our perspective from the defense sector to those various ministries and organizations so that we can be seen as willing participants in this phase. And a third one, like we have today and over these 3 days, is having planning workshops for the defense sector, but invite various stakeholders outside of government to be part of the planning process so that they can see how things are done, but also ensure that accountability towards the public as a whole, but also in terms of our development and security priorities.
That's important because defense cannot be done in isolation. It needs everybody's involvement, various sectors. So I'm coming now to you, Colonel Rokoura. The RFMF has is also face trust issues stemming from past actions. So today, how is the force looking to define its role under the national security strategy? What process is underway to ensure that it's relevant for today's world and capable in defending Fiji's security interests?
Stan, I think that's a very important question given the history of the RFMF. I think for the last 4 years, the institution itself has evolved, has seek to reposition itself in alliance with the national security strategy, the national development plan, as well as our foreign policy white paper. It is not only a tool, but we see it as a defense capability, that is fit for purpose. I think that is why we are having this workshop at the moment, and I'm thankful for the Ministry for Defense, for being the driving factor behind this, the DSG. Because it clearly articulates and it clearly defines the RFMF roles, not only the RFMF, but other defense mechanisms within the national security spectrum. When we talk about trust, Stan, I think you've seen how the RFMF continues to evolve in ways such as reconciliation process. We still maintain our national defense, so not the national support in terms of cadet programs, rural development, as well as other community engagements. But we have seen, as I said, the NSS articulates evolving and also emerging threats. I think that is why we need to position ourselves with other critical enablers in the defense sector. And by doing this, when we talk about fit for purpose, Akuila has already mentioned about reforms. I think the reform is what is critical about governance and legal reforms. It not only pushes in the RFMF, but it clearly defines our role in terms of the defense, in terms of the protection and the maintenance of security within our sovereignty and territorial integrity, but also define how we are fit for purpose and the capability, defense capability investments, the return of investments, that we need to understand, that we need to assess, how that impacts the people of Fiji.
So, building on from that, one of the key things is modernizing security institutions.
Yeah.
And one, I've seen some criticism online, Mr. Savu, that the Ministry of Defense is not moving fast enough because I saw that you promised, the NSS promised a formalized National Security Council, a senior officials committee meeting within 3 to 12 months, the overhaul of archaic laws like the RFMF Act, which is a 1949 Act,
Yes.
which is, that's many decades ago.
Yes.
The Police Act, 1965, and monitoring and evaluation. So what's the delay in implementing some of these actions or recommendations, particularly the legal framework, because very hard to move forward without this legal framework?
Thank you for the question, Stan. Yes, it's very difficult to move forward without the legal framework, especially if we're trying to set up a National Security Council and then the council that sits below that, which is the Senior Officials Committee. One thing that we are mindful of is that we need to ensure that before those committees are established, they go through the relevant approvals through government in terms of cabinet approval, but also their legal basis in terms of their existence, what they can decide on, and how wide-ranging their ambit should be. So one of the things that we are looking at is how similar committees are set up or established in other countries, in similar jurisdictions, what are the powers that they have, where do they sit, and the reporting mechanism. So for us, it's a learning curve in terms of establishing these committees and how they function. In addition to that, whilst we have those committees, it is imperative that they have the right support in terms of logistics and admin, because we need to ensure, one, they are properly set up, and two, the decisions from those committees are not only disseminated to the various agencies, but there's a follow-up mechanism in terms of the decisions made and how the agencies are implementing it and reporting back to the National Security Council. So looking at that overall architecture, we know that people may see it as a delay, but we want to ensure good governance is inbuilt into these structures. That's why it's taking a bit longer than was highlighted, but we understand that process.
Yeah.
In addition, we understand the process that it takes to establish these new laws, especially when you're going through the Law Reform Commission and the consultation process.
Yeah, and these are things you cannot just rush. I mean, it's taken a long time, but when we're doing it, we have to really do it in a critical, deliberate way, because these are things to do with lives, and security and defense, our territorial integrity. So, coming to that, Colonel Rokoura, our capability for our territorial integrity and our geography, for Fiji, I'll bring up the issue of drugs, for instance. It's a big issue now, causing alarm, fear, and panic. And that's linked to maritime security, because the two big drug busts that we have seen have come through through our seas, through our oceans. The one in Nandi, and then the one in Navua. So, what capabilities need? How does the force see itself as reforming, and to effectively address these issues?
You'll understand. I'll take you back to the guidance under the NSS. And under the sector security reforms, one of the strategic priority areas is the modernization of our defense mechanism, or our defense force. So when we talk about modernization, Akuila has already articulated the legal reforms that should be in place, as well as how do we modernize our capabilities, to mitigate these challenges, not only from the maritime areas, but also from our land, because we know everything that comes from the maritime has to end up in land. I know that there's been a public appetite for the RFMF, or for defense to come in place with the police, but it is a police role at point of time. That's why the legal reforms, it is important that it guides us on how we support the Fiji police force, or our law, in trying to tackle the drugs problem within Fiji.
Defining the role is important, right?
Yes.
Very clear, so we know what the responsibilities are, where it ends, who comes in at which area.
And something that we've identified during this workshop, Stan, and you should agree with us, that it's a defense of Fiji in terms of supporting things like transnational crime and drugs. It's not only RFMF, it's not only the police, but it is the whole of community. We mentioned the whole of government and the whole of community approach. And defense is everyone's business. And I'm glad that through this workshop, we'll be able to identify and clearly demarcate roles. That whilst we are committed to those roles, it also builds accountability, trust and transparency and fit for role, and more importantly, not more importantly, but part of that as well is the return on investments in our capability, whether it's tangible or non-tangible.
One thing I've noticed from the workshop is that you've looked at the internal challenges for security and also the external, with the geopolitics that's in play. And one important element of that is intelligence. What its defense institution knows and understands and has gathered. And one thing I've discovered is that Fiji doesn't have a real coherent centralized intelligence agency or a national body that collects intelligence, because our defense forces seems to be, one word I heard was fragmented in terms of the way it collects intelligence. So explain how that can, what's come up, what's some thoughts around that, how we can improve.
Thank you for the question, Stan. Yes, This was highlighted especially during our national security strategy consultation, and its final launching was the fact that the various institutions, whether it be in the defense side, with the police, in our financial sector through the Financial Intelligence Unit, they all collect their own intelligence, but there is no place where it's brought together and formulated to provide a 360-degree picture of what's actually happening. So that's why the term fragmented is used, because it's all done in bits and pieces, the various stovepipes of these organizations. One thing that has been identified from the national security strategy, and we support from the defense sector, is an apparatus where we bring all this intelligence together, provide a holistic picture that can be provided to our leaders for them to make appropriate decisions. If we give them on piecemeal basis, they won't be able to make the best decisions based on what's available. So how we bring that together, whether it be by establishing a new intelligence body, or whether we formally set up intelligence sharing protocols where we bring things together and provide that picture, that's again something that we need to decide further. But the need has been identified in terms of bringing all this together and providing a holistic picture to our leaders.
So many defense issues, we can't cover them all here. We've talked about the priorities, but the RFMF, Colonel Rokoura has set some timelines. Where to from here? So what can the public get to see out of this process?
Thank you, Stan. I'll start back from the strategic plan beyond 2022. So it has a time-bound definition where by 2027 we should integrate all these defense capabilities. That includes a structural configuration. When I talk about structural configuration, and it is about the policy, the legal framework that needs to be in place. And then we talk about capability development, not only about technology, but people capability as well. And how we redesign our force structure that is fit for purpose. And then we talk about capacity building, which is a professional military education. More so, how do we develop our leaders at all levels? This week, prior to the DSG, we've had the lead integrated capability value Taiki framework. And for that, I must thank the New Zealand Defence Force and also our strategic our defence partners for always supporting us in this journey. And having said that, why it is important about it, the outcome of the DSG will now pave the way for the discussions on the RFMF strategic plan beyond 2028.
Right. And so that's due around June, July?
After June, July, then we start to have a force structure at the moment, a force design structure that is aligned to the DSG and the NSS. And as we put the SP28, we see how we meet the requirements articulated within NSS. As you know, the NSS is from 2025 to 2030. So that is that 2-year timeline. So it will be reviewed after 2 years according to how that is going to be.
Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me, joining us on the brunch this morning. As you can see, Jacquee have been involved in some very deep and serious discussions about defense and trying to find the way forward, because this national security is important for national prosperity. That's an important thought that people must have. We can't be progressing economically if we don't have stability. Back to you in studio.
Thanks so much for that, Stanley. And there you have it, viewers. We're going to head to a quick break now, but don't go anywhere. When we come back, we'll be joined in studio by Fijian Competition and Consumer Commission CEO, Ms. Senikavika Jiuta. Welcome back. You're watching The Brunch right here on MaiTV. I'm Jacquee Speight, and Stanley has been joining us live from Pacific Harbour. But in studio this morning, we have the wonderful opportunity to speak with the FCCC CEO, Ms. Senikavika Jiuta. Ms. Jiuta, Thank you so much for being here this morning, for joining
you.
us,
Thank you for the invitation.
for making the time to be with us. I know you've got such a busy schedule, but getting straight into it, please tell us about the fuel situation we're currently facing in the country.
Okay, well, that is a very general question, Jackie. When you talk about the fuel situation, what I'd like to talk about is this 20% of fuel that's coming out from the Middle East at the Strait of Hormuz.
Yes.
Right? People are talking about, what it's 20%. Where's the 80%? You know, where are
Right.
the other 80%?
Yes.
And why are we feeling such a global crisis?
Yes.
So one thing I'd like to highlight is, with the 20% of oil coming out from the Strait of Hormuz, that 20% is the most traded internationally oil.
Right.
The other 80% is mainly for their domestic use. So for instance, USA is for their domestic use, China is for their domestic use, Russia is for their domestic use. So when you talk about international trading, it does not have a major impact. However, that 20%, when you talk about size, it's not really size that matters. It's how critical that supply is of that 20%. So with us here in Fiji, our crude oil, yes, it comes from the Middle East because the three oil companies that supply us the oil, which is Petro-Oceania, Total Energies, and of course, who's the other one? Pacific Energy. So Petro-Oceania is also known as Mobil, formerly known as Mobil. So those three companies, when the crude oil is supplied from the Middle East, it is then taken to Singapore.
Right.
Our refineries are at Singapore for the three companies. So at the refineries, there's a lot of work that works with the cleaning of the fuel. So that's where diesel comes in, unleaded, kerosene, premix, it gets mixed at home. And then when it's at Singapore, for the three companies to ship it home, there's a lot of cost that's involved. There's freight costs involved, international market movement costs involved. There's a means of Platts Singapore. So if you follow our monthly price changes, we're always talking about means of Platts Singapore.
Yes.
So means of Platts Singapore is actually like a trading means for fuel. So from there, then it comes home. So now that 20% is, there's a chokehold there at the 20%, there's disruption at the 20% supply, it's going to have a trickle-down effect, right? Not only to the international market, but us as a small island nation, it'll have an impact on us.
Absolutely.
So prices will have to increase, not only just fuel. So you must remember, fuel, everything is affected.
Everything,
right? Whether it's logistics, transportation, electricity, everything is affected.
And we're starting to see that effect across the world.
Yes, yes. So I
The
mean,
Philippines.
yes.
I think it was also Cuba. There's a number of places that's
Cuba
affected.
is on
Australia
electricity
is also
shutdown. Yes. So one thing that you'll see in Australia and New Zealand, as soon as the Strait of Hormuz was attacked, fuel prices actually spiked in those two countries. So I'm just going to refer to them because they're the closest.
Yes.
So the reason why they spiked immediately, because it's not a controlled market.
Right.
They are not a regulated market. Here, however, in Fiji, it's a regulated market. You have FCCC that regulates the price.
Right.
Right? And then how do we regulate the price? We look at freight cost, we look at the means of Platts Singapore, and we look at the landed cost, and of course the exchange rate. People are asking, why do we have to refer to the exchange rates? The exchange rates are critical because one USD is equivalent to $2.25 Fijian. We buy these barrels in US dollars. We don't buy it in Fijian dollars.
No, we don't.
Right? So when we buy it and then we come and sell it
It'd be
at
lovely
home,
if we could.
well, we can't. So when we come and sell it back home, we're selling at Fijian dollars.
Right.
But then we had to convert the US dollars.
Okay, hold on that. Stanley has just tapped in. Stanley, I believe you have a question for Ms. Jiuta.
But I really enjoyed that overview there about the fuel. I think I learned a few things from there actually. But one thing is price. The other thing is, the question on many people's minds: do we have enough, and how long? How much do we have to last us?
Thank you, Stanley. So in terms of supply, I can confirm nationally we have supply. There is stock. right? We're continuing to monitor the situation. We are liaising directly with the fuel suppliers. Right now, I do not want to give any, hopes or, just create that panic. But all I know, there is supply. Right now, there is supply and everything is stable.
So the government confirmed that we had 3 months, up to 3 months of national fuel reserve, right? Are you able to tell us why some service stations are already facing shortages?
Okay, so with the shortages, it's not about the supply. Supply is not an issue.
Okay.
From what we are monitoring on the ground, and we've been monitoring for the last 3 weeks, it's, I would say it's local disruptions.
Right.
It's because what's happening here at home. People are sort of panicking because they're seeing their family and friends back in Australia, New Zealand, and the US.
Yes.
They're saying, oh, prices are going up, you need to now stock. But here in Fiji, we don't need to at the moment, right? Because I can't comment on the 3 months reserves, but I can comment on the fact that there was supply issues just because of local disruptions.
Okay.
You must understand, at the fuel station, they plan the
Yes,
fueling.
they do.
Yeah, they have that tank that's underground, and that's why you'll see them do the dipping it's twice every day. We came to learn it's twice every day to manage their stock. So there is, from the service stations to the main fuel suppliers, they have a system. So they'll track and monitor the usage. So when it is low, then they'll send a truck. What we also need to understand, when the fuel comes to Vunda, it's stored there. And then for it to be transported to the other service stations, it's by way of trucks. So they plan weekly. So when there's a spike in demand, logistics become a problem for the suppliers. So then they have to start sending their trucks that they were not supposed to for that week. So they had to double the logistics and then try and cater for the demand.
The other thing too is, I think for a number of people, there's also the thought that our local suppliers are withholding fuel, and that's illegal under the FCCC Act, right? Are you able to advise what actions that the your enforcement teams take when this occurs?
Okay, so part of our monitoring and inspections is not only to monitor the stock, is to also verify the stock with the suppliers.
So you actually go in and
we do.
Show us. Open up your doors and show us what you have. I don't want to see it on paper. We want to see it
on the ground.
Right.
So we have a team that goes out on the ground, and then we have a team that liaises directly with the suppliers. So we monitor, and they do analysis. And then from there, we're able to assess whether it's a hoarding, supply issue, or a disruption issue because of the spike in demand. So we can assure the people that we are monitoring the situation.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Do not panic. But we'll be right back to tell you more about this. So stay with us. We're going to a short break. Before that, check out this quick and easy recipe from the great people at Extra Supermarket, a grilled chicken wrap.
Today we're making a quick and delicious coconut prawn soup, light, warm and full of tropical flavor. All you need, fresh prawns, coconut milk, ginger, garlic and lime. Start by pouring your coconut milk into a pot and gently heating it over medium heat. Next, add in your chopped ginger and garlic. Let that simmer to release those rich aromatic flavors. Now, add your prawns. Cook for about 3 minutes just until they turn pink and tender. Squeeze in some fresh lime juice to brighten the dish. And just like that, your coconut prawn soup is ready to serve. Warm, light, and full of tropical flavor. Perfect for any day.
Welcome back. You're watching The Brunch right here on MaiTV, and it is a beautiful Friday morning. The birds are chirping, the sun is sunning, and we're just enjoying ourselves here in studio. As mentioned earlier, and if you've been watching from the previous segment, we have the FCCC CEO Senikavika Jiuta in studio with us, and she's helping us understand the fuel crisis that is being faced globally right now. Not in Fiji yet. As mentioned earlier, there's no need to panic. But Stanley is joining us again from Pacific Harbour. Stan?
Yes, Jackie, there's, as we heard from Ms. Jiuta, there's no need to panic, but there was panic, and I wanted to to ask Ms. Jiuta, could they have communicated earlier? Have they checked their process of information? How quickly that went out? But also on the issue of people taking drums and gallons to service stations and filling them up. And there's confusion or there's questions about whether this is actually allowed or is it legal? And what are the dangers of that happening? If I'd really love an explanation from her on that.
Stanley, so I think your question's got two parts to it. First is what we could have done a bit earlier. One thing that we've done earlier, for sure, Stanley, was we've put out advisories. As soon as it happened on the 28th of February, the very next week we were putting out advisories to the public. It might not have reached everyone, but we had reached out to all media. We had reached out to all, through our social media. So we tried our best to inform people from the 2nd of March. But in terms of the second question, see, with fuel, it's hazardous, Stanley. It's hazardous and it's flammable. So people taking it home, taking their jerry cans and then, using those yellow drums to fill it in. First of all, it's flammable. It's got this, with diesel and unleaded, it's got this vapor that comes out. We use kerosene to burn things and we know how fast it is. But with kerosene, it's the lightest of the fuel substance.
Yeah.
So imagine when you're using diesel and unleaded to store at home, right? It can burn easily. So you're not only risking your life, you're risking your family's life, you're also risking your neighbors.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in those instances, we really wish that people could exercise discretion and just not panic, because if you had panicking, just causes chaos, not only to the suppliers to restock the fuel, but to everyone else that wanted to fill their fuel because it was really running at empty. They couldn't. And also now you compromise for, say for instance, for ambulance. I mean, there's emergencies happening, so they need to have fuel as well. But then again, it's not a personal responsibility. It's now come to a point that fuel is now a national responsibility.
Stanley? The question? Or?
Yeah, so, yes, and I want to move on now to, are you seeing any impact yet, or should there be an impact yet on the price of basic food items or, basic living expenses? Or, because, there is the suspicion price gouging or people using this panic to try and take advantage of it and raise prices. So should there be one? Are you seeing it? What's the assessment so far from the FCCC?
So far from our monitoring on the ground, no, we're not seeing it. We haven't seen it, especially even the markets. One thing we're very critical of is fertilizer. Fertilizer as well. So 13% global supply comes from the Strait of Hormuz.
Right.
And for our farmers here in Fiji, they use this natural gas called urea.
Right.
Urea is what they sell here in our shores. So we have not seen a spike in urea prices or fertilizer prices, because at the end of the day, for this goods to increase, it must have an impact from fertilizers. So we do not see that happening now, but we do forecast in the next couple of months that this might increase.
Okay then. So the Prime Minister had assured the public that there was no immediate fuel price hike, right? And that Fiji has, obviously, like I mentioned earlier, 3-month reserve. So reports indicate that petrol could hit $2.70 by May due to Fiji's 1-month pricing lag.
Right.
Are you able to give us an indication of when consumers should expect to see prices jump?
So Jacquee, well, like I said, we've been monitoring the situation. So say, for instance, currently the March prices, we are enjoying the import prices for January.
Yes.
Right? So for the import prices for January, if I can just put it plainly, at that time it was $79 a barrel. Right, $79 a barrel. If I check our team's figures as of, I say, 20th of March or 24th of March, it's around $193 a barrel. Right? So from $79 back in January, it's now $193. And mind you, it's climbing.
It's climbing.
Every day this war continues, it's going to have an impact on the barrel prices. So what we need to understand, the impact on the barrel prices. So when that's impacted, of course, freight cost will also increase. Freight costs, exchange rates again plays a critical role, and then the means of plat Singapore is what we trade in Singapore. So those are all increasing. So I cannot say at this moment whether it's going to be $2.70, $4 or $1. We'll see when it comes to the 31st
And
of
people
March.
just have to stay tuned and alert and listen intently.
Yes.
Going back to what Stanley had also mentioned, a lot of people went into panic buying, taking their containers, taking their gallon drum, you name it. Are you able to share with us? It's also illegal to be storing fuel at home. We talked about the suppliers hoarding the fuel, but I don't think the consumers are also aware of this as well. Could you shed some light on it too?
So for consumers, I know there's a section under the Petroleum Act, and that's looked after by the Department of Energy. They have their penalties, they have their clauses. But for FCCC, we cannot penalize consumers, but we can penalize the suppliers for hoarding. Right? But at this meantime, I understand there's a fuel advisory committee that's been set up, and they are strengthening certain legislations or regulations in the event it becomes a worst case scenario. Certain regulations might have to come in to cushion the supply impact.
So beyond how this, we're now looking at how Fijians are going to be impacted. Lower income families spend a large share of their income on basic goods, transport and cooking gas. Are there any, what kind of support or social protection systems might the government activate if conditions worsen? Are you able to shed light on that as well?
Well, I can't speak for the government, but I can say is that most of our basic food items are price controlled. We regulate those prices. Hardware is also price controlled along with fertilizer. So for those items that we're able to regulate and monitor, we will continue to do so. And if there's any overcharging that's happening, we will be able to detect it. But for government assistance, I'm sorry, I can't answer that question.
So in simpler terms, everyone just needs to prepare themselves accordingly, you know, and move with the times as it comes. And FCCC will continue to stand by and do all that you can.
Yes.
Stanley?
Yes, I just wanted to say, okay, no panic, but how do we prepare, you know, in a responsible way, given that there's a serious issue happening on that side of the world that could impact us. So what behavior change are you advising, or that we need to take note as we are living in this, you know, there's a war going on somewhere in the Middle East that could impact us? So no panic, but how should we responsibly prepare?
One is savings, financially savings. You need to really monitor your expenses. You know, this is not the time where you start buying luxury items, right? You need to start saving those. And then the other is responsible use of fuel. I mean, if you do not need to travel to Pacific Harbour for a picnic, please do not. Right? And if you think that, you know, if you can, even for work, for those of us that go to work, if we can carpool, if there's a few of us that live around Nandera, you know, let's all carpool into one vehicle, or not we start using the public transport. I mean, with buses, if you look at buses compared to vehicles, we even have vehicles that only has the driver and one passenger inside. But then there's about 5 vehicles that make up one bus when you see it on the road. So people really need to start planning how you use your money. And the other is just planning your travels. Please, no unnecessary travels at the meantime.
That's some great advice. A lot of people need that. Siding Stanley in Pacific Harbour. Now, if consumers witness fuel hoarding, price spikes, or service stations restricting supply, are you able to tell us how and where should they report this activity?
Well, I see Facebook is a very, I think, commonly utilized means
Overused.
Sometimes overused, but you know, we would urge during this time, if you can just take a snap and send it over to, take a photo and send it to our Facebook page. We've got a Facebook page. We also have Instagram accounts, LinkedIn and whatnot. So please just put it in, the time, the photo, and where. Right, so that we can just deploy our teams in those places.
Wonderful.
And also you can call in our office, 892-1991, or helpdesk@fccc.gov.fj.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Ms. Jiuta, do you have any final words to share with us before you leave us this morning?
Well, let's just prepare. That's all I'm asking everyone. Like, let's prepare for the worst. It doesn't mean that you start panicking. We just need to be responsible, and let's be wise about this.
Prepare and be wise. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Ms. Jiuta, thank you so much again.
Thank you so
for
much.
taking the time to come into studio and have this important conversation with us. We'll be right back after this short break, but first we'll join Alphonsus with some of the great products at Extra Supermarket.
Bula guys, and welcome to Extra Supermarket, where freshness, value and variety come together every time you shop. From original clean and aloe mist to icy blast, active scrub, moisture blast and even bold scents like Icelandic and Saharan, there's a bar for everyone. Long-lasting freshness that will leave you feeling clean the whole time. Now next up, grab yourself an exciting and refreshing drink with Joe's classic 350 ml range. Choose from tasty options like 7 fruits, apple and blackcurrant, green smoothie, mango and banana, orange and pineapple. Now this is perfect for busy days, lunch boxes or a pick-me-up anytime. And finally, keep it fresh with LA gum anywhere you go. Available in peppermint and spearmint sugar-free, plus collagen options in spearmint and strawberry. Now fresh breath, great taste and a little boost on the go. What more do you need? Now from staying fresh to staying refreshed, everything you need is right here at Extra.
Welcome back. You're watching The Brunch on MaiTV, and I hope you're enjoying the show so far. So after 3 games at home, the Drua are on the road for 2 weeks, taking on the Blues and Crusaders in New Zealand. And to tell us more about this, joining us live now from Auckland is Fijian Drua General Manager Commercial, Shane Hussein. Yandra Vinaka, Shane, and welcome to the show.
Yandra, Jacquee, always a pleasure.
So I understand the team arrived in Auckland last night and will have their captain's run today. How is the team generally?
Yeah, they got in really late last night. Overnight, really, it was 1 o'clock in the morning. They landed. Really bad weather in Auckland last night. They got to their team hotel closer to 2 in the morning. So they're having a bit of a rest because their captain's run is at 1:30 Auckland time. But today we're lucky the sun's out. The captain's run will be will be quite good because the sun is out and it looks like it's going to remain that way. Here is where they'll play tomorrow night at Eden Park. It's referred to as New Zealand's National Stadium, an iconic venue, and we're only playing here only for our second time ever. And it's going to be a fantastic occasion, Jacquee, because this is not just another regular Shop and Save Super Rugby Pacific match. This is the match between the Drua and the Blues for the Chueli Vindiri Memorial Trophy.
I also hear that someone very close to the hearts of both the Blues and Fiji Rugby is, you've just mentioned he's being honoured. Can you tell us more about that?
Of course, Jacquee, your viewers above a certain age, like Stanley, myself, Jamie, when we used to watch Super Rugby growing up from 1996 onwards, Chueli Vindiri was the first pioneering name. He was a superstar in his own right, and he formed an amazing partnership with the late Jone Tomuse. Those two absolutely terrorized Super Rugby Pacific defenses throughout the competition. And Chueli has played 64 times for the Blues, scoring 47 tries. He's actually the first Fijian ever to play for the Flying Fijians in 15s, playing for Fiji in 15s and 7s, and then New Zealand in 15s and 7s as well, becoming an All Black in the early 2000s. So it's a fantastic occasion. Unfortunately, Chueli Vindiri, who's from the Nasori Highlands, he passed away in 2022, very sadly. But the Blues and the Drua decided that it was a great time, an opportunity to honor the great man and recognize his contribution to Fiji and New Zealand rugby. So we've got the Chueli Vindiri Memorial Trophy up for grabs. So every time the Drua and the Blues play, whether it's at Eden Park here or at Churchill Park in Lautoka or Suva, the HSC Bank Stadium, we will be playing for the Shirley Bindiri Memorial Trophy. So it's a very emotional, very important, very significant occasion, Jacquee.
That is so special. Absolutely wonderful. Now, Mesu Ndolokoto is making a return after months in rehab, while Yosefa Namode has also made the starting lineup to take on the Blues. Can you talk us about the progress of this new signing and the return of Ndolokoto?
Well, let's talk about the old bull, Mesu, first. Absolutely, a Drua original started in 2022. He's been with us since day one. He's an important senior member of the squad. He has unfortunately had ankle injury from last year in off-season. He's been through surgery. He's been through a long rehab process, and now in the past few weeks, we've been giving him some good minutes through the curtain raisers with the Drua development. He's ready to step back onto the field for, shall we say, Super Rugby Pacific. He's a warrior. He's actually scored tries. He's got a try against the Blues already. We have a high hopes from Mesu to bring some leadership and some calmness to the on-field team. So it's a very important match, obviously, for us and both teams. And then Yosefa Namode, Super fans will be very happy, from playing for Super in the local Skipper Cup to playing, in Australia, and now he's back. He's back. He's now in the Swashibing Fijian Drua, getting, as you mentioned, his first start at inside center, which is going to be great. He's up against some really good players, All Blacks. All Blacks in waiting, centre pairing for the Blues. But look out for Sepa Namode to make his mark and remind everyone why he's such a talent and he's so widely regarded in Fiji. It is a big job. I don't want to understate the enormity of the challenge that lies ahead of the Drua in taking on the Blues here at Eden Park. But it's an occasion that the players are looking forward to, especially young Sepa Namode.
Thanks so much for that, Shane. And on that note, we're going to let you go because we know you've got a big, busy day ahead of you. I'm sure Stanley would have loved to have joined in on this conversation. He's stuck in Pacific Harbour at the moment, so we got to cross to him earlier. But good luck to you and the boys. All the very best. We'll be cheering for you all. Go, Drua, go.
I look forward to a great match tomorrow, Jacquee, and I know the people of Fiji are looking forward to it. As well. We'll probably hear Stanley's commentary on Facebook as he normally does. But thank you so much for your support, and appreciate the support and the prayers from our people back home in Fiji.
Shane, thank you so much. And Doulos Hope's floating book fair is in Fiji for the first time. They were in Lautoka last week and is currently in Suva. The vessel is a sister vessel of Doulos, which previously visited the island in May 2008. So visitors to Doulos Hope are offered a selection of over 2,000 different book titles at affordable prices. They cover a wide range of subjects, including science, medicine, arts, languages, faith, hobbies, cooking, and sport, with children's titles academic, text, dictionaries, atlases, and more. A visit to the book fair is something the whole family can enjoy. The brunch team visited the ship earlier this week and got us a sneak peek of what's on offer. Take a look.
My name is Daniel, I am from Brazil, and I'm representing the ship Doulos Hope. The ship is just arriving in Suva to stay here for 1 month. This ship is a floating library, it's a non-profit organization, is welcoming everyone in Suva to come inside our ship from the April 1st until the April 26th. We're going to be open, we have a floating library and also a floating cafe inside of the ship. So please come with your family to the port of Suva. So we are all volunteers and we have around 100 crew members here, all volunteers and from more than 35 countries. So we have people from the Pacific, from Asia, from Africa, Latin America, Europe, from all around the world, and we are here to serve. And for coming in, we only have a $2 Fijian fee to come inside. But this is only for adults because 12 years old and below are free, and also elders 65 years old are free as well. Enjoy our library, enjoy our cafe, and we're gonna have a nice time. We are all volunteers from many countries, and we want to connect with you and have a nice time with you here in Suva.
Doulos Hope will be open to the public at the Port of Suva from the 1st to the 26th of April. And, opening hours are Tuesday to Friday at 10 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. and last entry is at 5 p.m. while on Saturday and Sunday it is open from 1 to 7:30 p.m. Last entry being 7 p.m. and the ship will be closed on Mondays. If you have the time, please make sure you go and take a look at it. We're now going to cross to Jone Tomuse, who's joining us live from the Navua Market. Yandra Johnny?
Jacquee. Jacquee. Yes, I'm here at the Navua town. Behind me, you can see the Navua River. Navua is also known as one of Fiji's riverside towns, famous for its role in the sugar sector back in the days, and now it's thriving through the farming and the agriculture sector. Behind me, you can see the Navua River. There are boats that came all the way from Benga. The wooden one that came down from Namochi this morning. I've got one boat here that also came from Ngau. But today we're going to see what's at the market. We're going to have a small chat with some women here at the market in Bula Binaka. Ni ba magaltangan na muni but kena sabi na ba kinumuni chiki kena market.
Naka nadago elmeri matiwai na borisi au sa baki stol chiko nung bibingarab sa Navua Market.
Ilaw.
Naka nadago nga oros tanto mo na borisi o maraman ni tubaruan malika Aseri. Tamba ki ono nga kono bibingarab sa na market ko na.
Pinakabali so nada na tui ni bono ko na market. Hindi mi kinabir kena bono market sa beach.
Naka nanduin ang balat nyo na po nga biraw ni staw para ko sa na di market ve gala ko talsi mi na po na staw ni ka kung volta ka chipo ver nakasma to nakasma after may ngato kamera mi bulya naka inabo ang balat wala ni staw kanang ono ko.
Oh, so that's it, Jacquee. The prices here at Navua Market are cheap, according to them. Also, Navua is widely known for the Anaconda town. The reason being is because back in 2003, the movie Anaconda shot right here at this Navua River. It was shot in 2003. It came out later 2004, which was known as the Anaconda, the search for the blood orchid. From fresh food to rich history, Navua town remains full of life, Jacquee.
Vinakavakalevu Johnny for that. What a great update from Navua Market, being able to speak to the wonderful women vendors. Thank you so much for that. Have a great day ahead. Now at our shot of the day, and this was taken in the Savu Highlands and was sent in by Venina Rakautonga. That is a stunning, stunning, stunning shot. Man, our Fiji just serves up some of the most beautiful sceneries for us. We'd love to see pictures or videos from different parts of Fiji right here on The Brunch. If you have one you'd like featured on the show, please send it to us on the MaiTV Facebook page or email us at brunch@mytvfiji.com. And we also have the results from our poll that we put up last week on the MaiTV Facebook page. Heavy question from us. We had asked, do you believe a 6 to 8 month time frame is enough time to properly review and amend the 2013 Constitution? 57% of you said no. More time is needed, while 23% of you answered, yes, the time frame is sufficient. And this week, we have a brand new question we are asking. Are you concerned that artificial intelligence and deepfakes will be successfully used to manipulate voters and spread misinformation during the 2026 election campaign? Now, to let us know what you think, follow us on Facebook and participate in our poll question that is pinned at the top of the MaiTV Facebook page. And that's all we have time for today. I hope you've enjoyed the show. Thank you so much for joining us, for tuning in, and for The Brunch, I'm Jacquee Speight. We'll be back again on Tuesday, live at 10 a.m. right here on MaiTV. Have a safe and blessed weekend. Ni Samodamanda.